Hey guys, it's Haley and welcome to another bookish video. Today I'm going to be getting into my October wrap up. I read so many spooky books over the last month and I cannot wait to tell you about them because a lot of them are so good. I really didn't have many duds this month. Let's go ahead and get into every single book that I read in October. But wait, before the books, I do want to thank the sponsor of today's video, which is Dossier. Y'all know I've worked with Dossier so many times because I absolutely love them. They make really awesome luxury scents that smell exactly like the iconic scents you love, but for a fraction of the price. For example, here we have Dossier's Spicy Orchid, and it smells exactly like Black Orchid from Tom Ford. I'm telling you, this is a luxury fragrance and it lasts on my skin and my clothes. I get so many compliments on it. People mistake it for the actual luxury perfume all the time, but people don't know that I literally spent $30 instead of $200. And I know I've mentioned the past couple months that Dossier has originals as well because I absolutely love those. Of course, we love a good iconic scent, but the originals are so good. It's called the Genderless Collection because these are all very gender neutral scents. I mean, all scents are really gender neutral, but you know what I mean. This one is Fiery Leather and Rhubarb, and it is so perfect for winter. It is just like the warmest, spiciest scent. I love these spicy scents for fall and winter. And me and Cameron have both been wearing this. I think it's so fun that I get to match scents with my partner. Like, I don't know, I just think it's so cute. So whether you're looking for something super recognizable and iconic at a lower price, or you're looking for something completely new and original, Dossier has it all. I will go ahead and link them down below so you guys can shop. And I will put my discount code down there as well so you guys can save some money when you do. Thank you so much to Dossier for sponsoring this video, and now let's go ahead and get into the wrap up. So as always, we're gonna start with stats. I read 16 books in October for a total of 3,659 pages. And here is the mood breakdown, mostly dark, actually very big percentage dark, tense, mysterious, and emotional, but the funny piece of the pie is like way larger than it usually is, so that's kind of interesting. As for pacing, half of the books that I read were fast-paced. I had one slow-paced book and the rest were medium-paced. I read 13 books that were less than 300 pages. I did read a lot of novellas for Happy Halloween, my readathon, so that makes sense. And then I read 3 that were between 300 and 500 pages. I read all fiction books during the month of October. My genre breakdown is absolutely insane. Like, I read pretty much all horror, as you can see, but then all the other little subcategories that showed up within that genre, just, it's so crazy. Like, hello, I don't think I've ever had a more or less varied reading month, if that makes sense. And across all 16 reviews that I made in October, I had an average rating of 3.94, which I think is really good. I only had 1 2.5 star, 2 3 stars, 4 3.5 stars, 3 4 stars, 3 4.5 stars, and 3 5-star books. And here's the breakdown of how I read those pages throughout the month of October. I did a lot of reading. I actually read over 600 pages on the actual day of Halloween because I knew that I had specific books that I wanted to read on that day. And you can also see throughout the week of Halloween, it just like picked up so much, which I love seeing that too. So that's it for stats. Let's go ahead and get into the reviews, starting as always with my lowest rated book and working our way up to my highest rated favorite book of the month. The 2.5 out of 5-star book that I read this month was Slaughterhouse-Five by Kurt Vonnegut, and this is a classic. I read it for my booktuber Rex reading vlog. If you missed that one, I will link it up above and down below because I absolutely loved making that video. I featured some recommendations from some of my favorite creators, and this is Aspen from Aspen's Archives' favorite book. Unfortunately, it did not really work for me. I think a lot of it went completely over my head. You're probably familiar with the fact that this is a classic, and it definitely reads like one. It's it's a thinker, you know what I mean? And I kind of like when things are a little bit more obvious. I was having a hard time paying attention to it as well, because the majority of the book is about men and war, and I just really don't care about male characters, and I'm not interested in reading about war or thinking about war. I think the concepts that were explored in this book were just better explored for my tastes in the classic Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf. That is one of my favorite classics of all time, and this definitely reminded me of that. It was just kind of like a different perspective on the same topic, and it didn't work as well for my taste. But of course, it's a classic. I'm not gonna sit here and drag it. It is very valuable, I'm sure, for people out there, definitely for Aspen. Next up, let's get into my 3-star rated books. First up, we have Manhunt by Gretchen Felker Martin, and this is a book about an apocalyptic situation where all of the cisgendered men on Earth just like go absolutely bonkers. They're basically turning into like monsters, and we are following some transgender, non-binary, and female characters as they try to navigate this new world and stay alive. And I really liked a lot of the topics explored in this book. It has amazing LGBTQIA representation. Specifically, the trans rep was so awesome. I am an LGBTQIA therapist, so I work with quite a few trans people in my practice, and this very closely mirrors the experiences that I've heard about from them. But of course, please read Own Voices reviews and consider those before my opinions. I just really enjoyed a lot of the discussions in here about gender identity and sexuality and trying to figure yourself out, especially in this like weird world that considers gender so much, because it's literally an aspect of survival at this point. So that was everything that I enjoyed about it. However, there was quite a bit that I didn't end up loving. It was hard to really feel invested in the story because I didn't know where the story was going. It wasn't necessarily character driven, but the plot was very weak, so it was hard to stay invested in and keep picking it up. If I didn't start out my very own readathon with this book, I don't think I would have been motivated to pick it up over and over, because it did drag quite a lot. The plot just seemed really all over the place. We switched perspectives multiple times on one page, and there wasn't a like marker to tell you, okay, now we're switching to this person's perspective. So it was really easy to get lost in the plot, literally. And there just wasn't a strong driving force or an end goal that I knew we were getting to at the end of the story. So it felt a little bit hard to be invested. I think with a lot of edits to the plot structure, this could be a lot better of a book, but for the representation alone and just my enjoyment of it, I give it 3 stars. The other 3-star book that I read in the month of October is a short story collection called The Trick-or-Treater and Other Stories by Brianna Morgan. Brianna Morgan and I actually have connected over social media, so hey girl, if you're watching this, I absolutely loved this collection, and she was so sweet to send me some book plates and another signed book, so I will be reading more of her in the future for sure. And honestly, the standout of this short little horror collection was the very first story, The Trick-or-Treater. It's the namesake of the collection, and it totally makes sense because I think it's the strongest story in here. That was a 5-star story on its own. It was so much fun. It takes place on Halloween night, and this weird creature called the Trick-or-Treater comes to this old woman's door. There's a moral dilemma. It is so good. The rest of the stories were okay. There were a couple that I didn't love, but nothing really stood up to that first title story, so the collection kind of lost momentum some over time, which is why I gave it a 3-star. Next up, let's move on to my 3.5 out of 5-star rated books, starting with Petrified Women by Jeremy Ray. I tacked this one on at the very tail end of Happy Halloween, and I am so glad that I decided to push in one more book for my readathon because this one was absolutely bonkers. We are following a girl who is dating this guy, and he's like a prankster, so they go back and forth like pranking each other. He's giving like YouTube prank boy, kind of cringe. I really don't like that. But she is wanting to prank him on his birthday, so she sneaks into his apartment and she's ready to like jump out and scare him for the gag, for the bit, and she ends up seeing something really disturbing while she's hiding in that closet about to jump out and scare him. Yeah, she doesn't end up jumping out because she finds out her boyfriend might not be the nicest man. He might instead be a serial killer. So we follow her as she finds out this horrifying information and tries to, number one, get herself out of there because now she's stuck in the apartment witnessing this event, and number two, how she's gonna handle this situation now that she knows her boyfriend is literally a killer. She can't stay with him, but she also can't break up with him because then, hello, red flags, he's gonna know that she knows. And number three, how is she going to seek justice for all of these women? And I really, really liked this book. It was super short. It was like 100-something pages, just barely over 100 pages. Really fast-paced, heart-pumping, easy to read, and it had some very unique elements that I don't want to give away, but it made it much more interesting than your typical serial killer story. And while those were fun and unique, they also kind of lended to my lowering of my rating. Originally, I was going to give this a 4-star, but the longer I thought about it, the more I realized kind of how all over the place the plot was. It had a lot of different devices that it was trying to use and play off of, and a couple of them just felt like they weren't completely fleshed out. I would have rather the book like picked a lane and went there rather than trying to do so many different things, so I took a 1/2 star off of my rating. Also, I do want to mention, if you are thinking about going into this book, please look up trigger warnings. There is very, very triggering sexual assault content in this book. I think the representation is amazing, but it is in there, just so you know. Next up, I have another short horror story collection to tell you about, and that is A Blackness Absolute by Caitlin Marceau. I love Caitlin Marceau, you guys. Absolutely love her. And this is her newest collection, I believe, of just little short queer feminist horror stories. Not all of them have like a lot of commentary like that, but a couple of them do, and I just really like the vibes. They're very, very atmospheric. My favorite ones were A Blackness Absolute, The Blue, Gordon, and The Broomway. I loved those stories. It's really hard for me to rate short story collections because I try to like take it as a whole, the flow of the collection, which this one kind of went back and forth with my enjoyment, but I also kind of try to like find an average rating across what I thought of all of the stories. And when I averaged all of my ratings of all the stories together, we landed on a 3.5. And honestly, I find that a lot of short story collections end up being a 3.5 out of 5-star rating. So don't take that to mean that it's like below average at all. I really enjoyed it. They were just, you know, flow. There was just, you know, some up and down. Next up, we have another book that I featured in my BookTuber Rex vlog, and that is Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield. Wow. This is an intense book. If you like reading about grief and loss through the lens of trippy sci-fi horror, this is for you. We are following a woman who's married to this lady, and she's like a scientific researcher. She goes down in the ocean in submarines to do scientific research down there, and her wife like gets lost underneath the sea in the submarine. Finally, she comes back, but she's not the same as she was when she went under initially. So she's grappling with having her wife back, but her being tremendously different, and all of the grief that comes along with that. while also trying to find out what exactly happened to her while she was in that submarine lost to the world for an extended period of time. It was really a heavy read for me, and unfortunately it just wasn't super intriguing, the actual content, but because it was so beautifully written and the grief rep was so wonderful, I didn't want to slight it too much just based on my own personal interest. I am finding that I just really don't like books that take place around water, because I read Feed Them Silence by Lee Mandela, which follows like a very similar plot structure, but instead of being underwater, the wife who's like losing it is losing herself through her research into wolves, and I liked that one a lot better than this one. So it's just kind of personal preference, but if you like one, I think you will like the other. And the last 3.5-star book I want to tell y'all about is probably going to be a massive shock, at least if you're not on my Patreon. If you're my Patreon, then you already saw the exclusive Halloween reading vlog of me reading this book and actually enjoying it. But for the rest of y'all, I feel like this is like breaking news. I actually really enjoyed a Natasha Preston book. What is going on? Are we in the Twilight Zone? I don't know. But Natasha Preston's newest release, The Haunting, was actually really great for me. In this book, we are following a girl who last year found out that one of the people closest to her was a serial killer. So her boyfriend's father was convicted of all of these murders last year, and obviously it's a year later and everyone is still kind of like shunning that horrible man's kids, even though the kids didn't do anything wrong. And she's like, what the fuck, like, stop hating my boyfriend, he's literally not a killer. But copycat murders start happening, and she starts to doubt and wonder, is her boyfriend now carrying out the same crimes as his dad, or is this somebody else, and who will be next? I don't know why this book is called The Haunting, because it literally has nothing to do with ghosts. The cover, the title, it's giving like paranormal, but no. If you go into this expecting like a little paranormal YA thriller, you're not going to get that. You are going to get a serial killer mystery. And it's very Halloween coded, which I wish Natasha Preston would have advertised that. I'm glad that I read it on Halloween because it has all the autumnal vibes. If you want like every Halloween activity ever imagined packed into a book with murder and honestly pretty decent twists, pick this up. It was so easy to read, so fun. I read it in a night. I didn't guess the twist, which is like unheard of for me and Natasha Preston. I was gonna give it a 4-star because I really enjoyed it. But then that cliffhanger ending, I'm sorry, I can't do it, Natasha. You gotta find another bit. I had to knock it down to a 3.5. All right, now we're getting into the really good stuff, my 4-star books. We're gonna start out with Scream for Us because this is such a meme, okay? This is one of those short little throwaway holiday themed smut books that are just absolutely insanity and really have no meaning behind them at all whatsoever, except for giving you a fun little time. And that is exactly what this book did. It really carried out what it set out to do. So I can't really fault it for that. Some people really get mad at me for rating these silly little books like 4 and 5 stars, but like, y'all, that is the point of them. They did exactly what they're supposed to do. And Scream for Us is not just a Halloween smutty moment. It is a masked man reverse harem smut. Yeah, so if you're on Masked Man TikTok like I am, and you would like to imagine spending a night with Ghostface, Michael Myers, Freddy, Jason, that kind of vibe, it's good. Okay, it's good. And there's also like a little murder thriller subplot, which is kind of weird, but also kind of good. I liked it. It's not that deep, but it does what you need it to do. Next up, I have Coraline by Neil Gaiman. I also read this one for my readathon because it fit the classic horror prompt, and I'm so glad that I did. I also ended up watching the movie and really enjoying that as well. This book is just an absolute fever dream. I kept trying to like find the plot, like hang on to the moral, hang on to the message, and I just kept getting lost in it. That was literally the only thing that annoyed me that brought it down to a 4-star instead of a 5. But other than that, it was so much fun, so whimsical, so vibey. We're literally just following this little girl named Coraline, and her parents don't pay her much attention, so she ends up sneaking into this alternate dimension through this cupboard in her house. And when she goes through the cupboard, on the other side, it's like basically like the upside down world, where it's their other house with her other mother and her other father, and she ends up maybe having to be trapped there, so she's trying to find a way to get back to her normal life. And of course there is, because it's like a children's book, a moral, a lesson. I would have liked that to be like, you know, commentary threaded throughout the story, but unfortunately it is a children's book. So I think I was looking for something more from this book, that it's just, it's not what it is. It's not for adults. But I did enjoy it for the vibes. So 4 stars. It's also beautifully, beautifully written, as all Neil Gaiman books are. And my last 4-star rated book is Disco Death Trap by Cameron Rubik. Oh my god, this adorable little mass market paperback with the bloody roller skate. I'm living for this. This is just a straight up fun, no thoughts, head empty 80s slasher. Basically what I want at all times. This was also the book that I read at ACL. And I know that probably sounds crazy. Haley, what are you thinking? You were at a music festival that you paid hundreds of dollars to attend, and you were sitting there reading your book? Yeah. So I camped out at the barricade to see one of my favorite bands of all time, and I was sitting there for 9 hours as I waited for them to be front row. And I had to pass the time in some way between sets. So I read this and I was in a state of being that was not necessarily sober. So reading this fun, funky 80s slasher in that state was really amazing. Like, I really cannot tell you, I cannot accurately capture how amazing the experience of reading this book was. It was kind of all over the place. The pacing was a little tiny bit off. If I could change anything about this book and name like the one reason why I didn't give it 5 stars, it would be that. But also I was not in a state where I feel like I could accurately judge pacing, if you know what I mean. So it could have been that, but all I can do is rate based on my own experience. Basically, we're just following a bunch of teens who get trapped in a roller rink during a lock-in, and someone is picking them off one by one by one, and we have to figure out who it is. I did not guess the twist. I was completely shocked at the killer. The slashing was incredible and suspenseful, and the gore was decent but not overwhelming and over the top. It had little spooky elements, and oh, it also takes place on New Year's Eve. It's like snowy, and they're like waiting for the ball to drop and have the midnight kiss. So if you're looking for a New Year's Eve horror book, this would be great for that, for all of my seasonal mood readers out there. It was just so fun, so solid, loved it. Next, let's get into my 4.5 out of 5 star books. These were so close to being favorites. Like, that is my 4.5 star category, is like just so close to being a favorite, but it didn't give me that 5-star feeling. First up, we have my very first manga that I've literally ever read, and that is Spy Family Volume 1. I absolutely loved my experience reading this. I literally went out and bought the next 3 volumes immediately because I just loved it so much. It was so pure, so heartwarming, so funny, and just absolutely adorable. It was such a fun, light way to pass the time, and obviously it was a quick read since it is like mostly pictures. I also really enjoyed learning how to read manga, and just like immersing myself in a new experience was so fun. In the Spy Family series, we are following this guy who's a spy and an assassin, and he has to like basically go into this undercover operation, but he needs a family to like blend in undercover. So he meets this woman who's an assassin and this little girl who has like mind reading powers, and all these quirky characters are posing as this like normal suburban family trying to blend in so they can do their undercover work, and it is so funny, so cute. Also, like, a little bit dark and mysterious. Like, obviously there's killing going on, so yeah, very fun. Literally the only reason that it's not a 5-star is because I didn't get the like 5-star feeling. It was just like a good quick little time. Next up we have When the Reckoning Comes by LaTanya McQueen, and this is a horror but also like kind of thriller vibes. It gave me a little bit of thriller about a woman who is invited back to her childhood friend's wedding, and unfortunately this wedding is taking place on a plantation with a history of slavery. So it's in very, very poor taste, especially because the bride's best friend that she so graciously invited back is a Black woman. So there's a lot of like trauma there for her, and she just didn't consider that at all. So we are witnessing kind of the breakdown of this long-term friendship, and we're also witnessing the horror of all of the trapped souls from past slaves on this property. There's obviously a ton of racial commentary in here, massive, massive trigger warnings for generational trauma, racial trauma, all of that kind of stuff. Make sure that you are okay to engage with that kind of content before you read this book. But if you are looking for that kind of commentary, it does it so well. And I loved so many scenes from this book are just like living in my mind rent free. Oh my God, there's a scene where she like thinks that there are bugs on her and she's scratching her skin. She wakes up covered in scratches. Like those kind of like horror movie moments happen so often in this book. The character dynamics and relationships were developed masterfully over the course of the book, and that last chapter hit with such a punch. The only reason that this isn't a 5-star favorite of all time is because it kind of left me hanging at the end. I don't know, there was just like this moment where I was like, wait, that's all? Like it just kind of fell apart at the end with the pacing. I still loved the writing, loved the development, loved what happened. It was just a feeling that I can't quite put my finger on, where I felt a little abandoned by the story. I think we were really focusing on developing the character relationships through the majority of the book, and when that kind of like wrapped up and we moved on to focusing more on the plot, I felt like I was missing that part of the story towards the end. The last chapter was still so amazing. Honestly, I don't think, if that last chapter wasn't in there, I don't think it would have been a 4.5. I think it probably would have been a 4-star, but that last chapter just left me speechless. I loved the device used in there, which obviously I'm not going to spoil, but so good. Next up, we have my Pretty Girl book club pick for the month of October, and I always love it when I get to talk about my book club pick later on in the wrap up, because it usually means that, well, it definitely means that I enjoyed it, but it probably means that everyone else in the book club enjoyed it as well. And this past month's pick was The Quiet Tenant by Clement McCallan. And this, I don't know, it was giving like unassuming. Like I first saw this cover and I was like, okay, it's giving nothing. The title, The Quiet Tenant, what does that mean? I don't know, it's giving me nothing. But this story was so unique. If you like a serial killer thriller, you're gonna like this. I would kind of pitch this as Notes on an Execution if it was actually exciting and thrilling instead of just marketed as a thriller, because let me tell you something. Notes on an Execution is not a thriller, okay? That's literary fiction, and it's beautiful, but it's historical and it's literary, and I don't want that when I'm being sold on a thriller. This is what I want. In this story, we are following this man who is a serial killer through the perspectives of various women in his life, and this one very specific event is happening over the course of the book where he's been keeping a woman he kidnapped hostage in his barn out back, but when his wife passes away and they have to move out of that house, he has to move his hostage with him and his daughter into the new house and somehow explain to his daughter why there's a hostage kidnapped woman living with them. Yeah, sticky situation. When I tell you this is a unique setup for a thriller, that's what I mean. So interesting. The psychological part of this book was the most appealing part for me. And there's just a lot going on in here, like so much to discuss. We had a great discussion about it over on my book club, which of course you can check out if you're a part of my Patreon, which is always linked down below. But yeah, we absolutely got into the nitty-gritty talking about this book. I I loved so many elements of it. But overall, if you're looking for a shocking, not necessarily like twisty, but thrilling thriller that will just suck you in, and it also has a layer of psychology, commentary, meaning to it, you will love this book. Only reason why it wasn't a 5-star is because it did not give me that 5-star feeling. There were a couple pieces at the end where I kind of got actually a similar feeling to When the Reckoning Comes, where I just felt a little abandoned at the end. It got really plot centered at the end, and I wanted those character relationships like put with a nice little bow on them. And finally, we've arrived at my 5-star books, my top 3 favorite books of October. Let's start out with my new favorite author. I am obsessed with her, and that is Rachel Harrison, Cackle. Oh my god, I really have to hand it to Matt and Rainey. Both of y'all told me this was going to be a 5-star for me, and both of y'all were very correct. It is so good. We are following a woman who, after this big dramatic breakup, is moving out of the city and into this small little coastal town where it feels like Halloween every single day. Like, it's just giving what I imagine Salem to be, just very cozy autumnal vibes. And when she moves there, she meets this woman who is kind of like the creepy lady. Everyone in town seems to be afraid of her, and our main character suspects that she might be a witch. So she's trying to navigate really herself and figuring herself out in a new context without this relationship, and also trying to navigate a new friendship with a witch who might try to pull her into her witchy world. It's really character driven, which I love. The characters feel so genuine and relatable. That's what I love the most about Rachel Harrison's writing, honestly. Her characters just feel like real people, even though they're like witchy, fantastic elements happening. Somehow it still feels so rooted in reality. It is so atmospheric, so cozy, but there are still those like little disturbing horror elements that come out of nowhere. Even though majority of the time it's like cutesy, cozy horror, it's more of these psychological aspects that come up and shock you. This book is really just perfect. Like, I have nothing bad to say about it. No notes at all whatsoever. Pacing is perfect. It's easy to read. Characters are fun. Setting is fun. It has meaning to it. Like, everything is amazing. If you like feminist, character-driven, cozy horror, you're gonna love it. My next 5-star book is the first book in the Autumn Crow High series by Cameron Chaney, who is a booktuber here on the internet. He is the host of Library Macabre, so I will link his channel down below if you want to check him out. You should also check out his books though, because I read Autumn Crow, which was a short story collection, a couple Halloweens ago. I absolutely loved it, gave it 5 stars. This one is the first in like a Fear Street-esque series that takes place in the same town, Autumn Crow, where it's Halloween like every single day basically. And this is the first installation in the series. It's called Fresh Hell, and it is so good. Like, this is what I really want at all times. Light, no thoughts, head empty. It's giving Fear Street, it's giving fun, it's giving like gory, interesting, kind of paranormal, kind of spooky, but it's not just that. Like, it doesn't just stop there. There are moments in this book where I was like actually taken aback by the emotion that I was feeling. Like, it has a depth that those like nostalgic reads like Fear Street just like don't have. And it also takes it the extra level with the gore as well. So we got like commentary, meaning, but then we also got like a little extra spook, because this is obviously not like a YA series. And in this, oh my god. Girl, sorry, Boba is literally screaming at me. Hold on, she might want to say hello. Oh my god, y'all, I am so glad that I got up to get her, because she was barking at the freaking FedEx man. I didn't even hear him at my door, and he had my wine delivery. So thank god she alerted us to the presence of my wine. This is Boba. If you don't know her, now you do. She is my absolute queen. Look at her. Everyone's obsessed with boba. What's new? Okay, now y'all cannot be fighting. I'm trying to talk about my favorite books. Hold on. Everybody shut up. Quiet on set. Anyway, in this first edition in the Autumn Crow High series, we are following this girl named Bailey, and she just recently experienced the passing of her father, and she's going back to school, new school year, trying to grapple with her grief, and then she meets a boy, but it's not like in a romantic context for her, because she's like, I've seen this boy in my nightmares. And for me personally, if I met a man who was appearing in my nightmares, I personally am delusional and I would not see the red flags. I would be like, yes, no, it's a sign. It's a sign. I take everything as a sign. I am a lover girl. I am a double Gemini. Like, unfortunately, I would have got in this situation. But Bailey is smarter than Hailey, and she is determined to figure out who this man is, where he came from, and how he's possibly connected to her father's death. Along the way, so many things happen. I feel like this was such a short, quick, like easy to read book, but so much was set up for the rest of the series. Like, little moments would happen and I'm like, I can't wait for that character to come back around, or ooh, I think I see a plot line there. It just felt like Fear Street. You know what I mean? When you're like reading a Fear Street book and there's like, oh my god, little like Corky, I know she's gonna come up in a future book or whatever. Like, I love that nostalgic feeling, and to have it with something that's like actually of, you know, substance was really, really nice. So I can't wait to read the rest of the series, and I absolutely loved this one. It's not just for like Halloween time. I feel like you could read it at any point in time if you're a horror lover. So go read it. It's really good. And my last book that I want to talk to y'all about, my favorite book of the month. Y'all, I like get chills talking about this book. Like, the last two were like flawless, perfect, 5-star, but this is like favorite of all time status. I don't know what it is. Something about this book just like hit for me, and that is Night's Edge by Liz Kieran. What? The group book for Happy Halloween? You're telling me some kind of, here's the delusion, y'all get ready for it, some type of sixth sense entered my mind when I chose this group book, and I had a premonition and somehow knew that this was going to be a new iconic favorite of all time. Yeah, I'm guessing that's what happened, because I had no reason for picking this book as the group book. I just like thought it was a new release horror that seemed interesting, and it also fit the like queer rep prompt, and I am so glad that I did, because I am obsessed with this book. I already pre-ordered the sequel. I cannot wait for a series. What? Whoa. Oh my god, hold on. Who am I? Because I'm not a series reader, and not me having 2 first books in a series as my 5-star favorite 2 books of the month. That's insane. And Night's Edge, we are following this girl who, her mom has something going on, okay? They're living in like a post-apocalyptic, post-pandemic kind of world where some people basically have this disease that is vampirism. They start to turn into a vampire, and she, our main character, she is trying to save her mother from this disease, but also she is grappling with falling in love with a girl. And it is just the sweetest, cutest, most pure little romance in here. It's kind of insta-lovey, but hello. If you've ever had a WLW interaction, like, it's kind of insta-lovey, you know what I mean? So the romance is so cute, but also the character dynamics. Like, this is so character driven, and I loved every single second of it, because our main character, I just loved her. Her complicated relationship with her mom, her like journey of trying to discover herself, her discovery of her sexuality. It was so in depth and so amazing without feeling slow and bogged down. Like, I read this book so fast. The plot was interesting and had a lot of layers to it. There was like a family trauma kind of aspect that I really liked. Again, the character dynamics and relationships were really great. There was queer rep, and it was just fun. It was just fun. It simultaneously felt like deep and meaningful, and I was low-key tearing up at one point. but then it also felt like light, fun, easy to read horror. There's a major scene that takes place at a music festival. Like, yeah. I loved it. I loved everything about it. This book was written for me, basically. So with that, those are all of the 16 books that I read during the month of October. I hope you guys got a few good recommendations from this video. If you liked it, go ahead and give me a like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Leave me a comment and let me know, do you like any of these books? Are you gonna plan on reading any of them now that I've told you about them? Also, don't forget to go down below and check out Dossier. Use my code for some money off some amazing but affordable luxury scents. And of course, don't forget to go to therapy and read a book this week. I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!